You know what time it is.
Jaman.
Yeah, man.
Welcome to the Cali High Podcast. This is your host, Chenzo Nico, and I've been a cannabis connoisseur for 50 years. On the Cali High Podcast, we will talk all things cannabis as they relate to California and beyond. From the history of buds in the state, to the laws that now govern its use, to notable personalities in cannabis and how they shape the industry in California and the world, to growing personally and professionally, indoor and outdoors, from flowers to concentrates, edibles to topical cannabis creams, and the people behind the scenes. Reports from dispensaries, cultivators, medical patients, historical documents, and of course, recreational users. And it's those recreational users we're concerned about this week. Hi folks, this is Cali High's 8th episode, and I'm Chenzo Nico. I'm here with Joe the Sound Guy.
Hi, I'm Joe the Sound Guy.
And Los Angeles has been on lockdown with the rest of California for the last 2.5 weeks due to the COVID virus.
Chenzo, do I still need to wear the mask, or is it okay? Can I take it off now?
I think this is the only time I've ever sounded better than you.
Well...
But you can take it off, bro.
Thank you. Thank you.
He's got his bass turned up in the voice or something. I need his coffee. Fuck. And my wife gave me permission to come over here to do this, bro.
Shit. All right. Hey, we have a repeat guest.
Yes, his name is Jerred Kiloh, president of the United Cannabis Business Association.
Cool guy.
Yes. And this week we talk about the state of affairs with the cannabis industry in California and how the classification of essential came to be and
how they're dealing with the virus.
Yes, and what to expect from here, how the dispensaries are handling the CDC's recommendations and so forth. So let's hear from Jerred. Today, Cali High is checking back in with Jerred Kiloh, president of the United Cannabis Business Association and owner of the Higher Path in Sherman Oaks here in California, to talk about the current state of affairs in the cannabis industry. Well, welcome back to Cali High, Jerred. How are you?
I'm doing good, thank you.
Excellent. Can we talk about the role the UCBA has played in getting cannabis declared essential?
Well, in the beginning, we kind of recognized this space where we might be left out of a system that was going to start, having the have and have nots. And so in kind of an early detection of trying to be a little bit more forward thinking and be proactive, we started writing letters to departments of public health all throughout the state in an effort to let them know where we stood as an industry, where the 25 years of legalization under Prop 215 and SB 420 and now Prop 64, McCursa, ALMA, all those things, the debate over whether cannabis is medicinal or not is over. That debate has happened years in the past, and that shouldn't be a debate we're bringing into the forefront today, especially during a pandemic. So our goal was to make sure that we kind of told why we should be essential, not just to kind of reiterate that we're, a medical industry, but to kind of say what would be the harms to the system if you now disenfranchised people who had been considered medical for this long. And so our goal was to really go and kind of plead our case. And our case was, it seems very simple, but I think when you look at unintended consequences of what happens when you create bans or you create, products that people have become so accustomed to having and getting access to, when you take those away, what kind of undue consequences do you add? And so we started going through what are those unintended consequences. And one is, if you create a bifurcation of medical versus recreational, and you only allow certain cannabis businesses that are essential to only sell to medical patients, what are you doing to the ones who maybe self-identify as medical patients but didn't go through the state system to get MMIC cards, the medical marijuana card, or you didn't go to your doctor over the last couple of years to go get a new prescription because we've kind of created this over-the-counter sort of drug in cannabis as well as a prescription. So there's both still there, but you can go and get, a prescription for fentanyl or an opiate to reduce inflammation or pain, or you can go get an aspirin. So all those things are available at CVS. We were trying to draw some correlation to what does a pharmacy or CVS offer to their consumers that makes them essential. And a lot of those same things cannabis companies offer as well. They offer, prescription ratio drugs for a lot of different ailments. There's also a lot of over-the-counter stuff that are pretty much readily available, and we want to make sure that people have those same tools that they had previous to this pandemic to make sure that they didn't now run to a new doctor to kind of say, okay, now I lost my CBDs and I'm an epileptic. I need to go get to a neurologist. I need to go get a new prescription for Dilaudid, which is anti-seizure medication. And then we're going to put undue pressure on a healthcare system that's already stressed. So taking that to a health department and saying, we don't want to add undue pressure to a healthcare system that is stressed. So don't put people in position to feel like they have to go get these services and now communicate to a doctor about their prescription needs for cannabis. And so part of it was that. The other part was we're a medical product, and a lot of people use this for medical needs. And if we really are going to look at what is an essential need to consumers and to patients, then we can't disenfranchise them to just relegate you to go, sorry, your cannabis is gone. Now go find it somewhere else.
Yeah, Americans are notorious for self-medicating, so it would be a big problem, whether they had a medical card or not.
We worried about people not having access to ratioed products that they become accustomed to for their ailments and their diseases. We came to kind of the conclusion that we don't want to push people from a legal industry into an illicit one. When you're talking about like edibles and other products that could be, you could maybe not know what the milligrams are in the illicit industry versus, a regulated one. You might have people who take more than they should. Back in the day, or you weren't sure if you're supposed to eat the corner of a brownie or eat the whole thing. And so, eating the whole thing, every once in a while you ate that whole brownie and then your friends are like, you ate the whole thing? And like, we didn't want that to be what's going on here, and that people who become accustomed to eating a certain amount can now be in the hospital or the emergency room because they weren't really aware of what was going to happen if they ate more than they're kind of become accustomed to. So I think in a lot of ways, that was just kind of the opening of the conversation. And then we started talking about employment. We started talking about, social needs when you're kind of confined to one space, sheltered at home. Some people might kind of calm their nerves with alcohol, with cannabis, with, other drugs, exercise. I guess exercise is jogging in place now. So what are we doing to put pressure on the social structure too? And when you go home and maybe you drink more because you don't have access to cannabis, what do we know about alcoholism? What do we know about violence that's attributed to alcohol? What do we know about domestic abuse inside of homes? Like all of those things became a reality as we talked about limiting access to cannabis. Then we started talking about the psychological effects. The decrease of anxiety that we've seen in a lot of different strains, and especially in CBDs, is that calms the amygdala center of your brain. What are we doing to people psychologically when they become accustomed to this and are looking for, some benefit to either take their mind off of things, remove some anxiety from their life? What are we doing by taking away these tools that they become accustomed to by making cannabis non-essential? As we went down that list of medical and access and social and psychological, we really did start to show these departments of health that we are in need. They are essential. And before we even had to make that decision, and there was even this kind of scare that happened, pretty much right near the beginning of March, where there was this huge increase in demand to our cannabis dispensaries. And we started looking around, and I started going to some of these healthcare professionals, and I said, well, the framing shop down the street, they're not open. And there's no demand for their products because most people don't think that framing a picture on their wall is going to be an essential need. But why did we get this huge influx of demand in our businesses as cannabis before people weren't sure if we were going to get the moniker of essential and be able to stay open? They tried to stockpile. And we really wanted to show that there was this inherent demand from people who are consumers, who are coming into our dispensaries, making sure they stocked up because they weren't sure what the future held. Just like people stocked up for 2 years worth of toilet paper.
Has the panic buying somewhat leveled off?
Not only did it level off, but it went below pretty much our averages. We had about a 70% increase across the board in sales because increase in demand, weren't sure, insecurity about what the future held, had people stockpile. Well, that only lasted for about 8 days. Then we got our essential moniker from the state. A lot of cities and counties started giving essential monikers to the cannabis industry. And then people started to level off. And then as that leveling off happened, we started to realize there was a lot of parts of this that created some downward demand, which is we don't have tourism anymore. We're used to seeing in California 100 million people a year who come here to vacation. And I know that in large cities like San Francisco and Los Angeles and some of in San Diego, like most of the cannabis businesses there, 30% of their business is tourism. So we already knew that there was going to be this inherent lack of demand because there just wasn't the number of people who were going to be coming into our state for tourism. And we also looked at the unemployment rate. It was 4%, just like a month ago. And now week after week, we're seeing this huge increase. It's like, it's 10 or 11%. We don't know. It might be up to 20 in a month or so. And so when we look at that, we're looking at who has disposable income. We also looked at when are people going to be getting some unemployment checks. I know some people have been waiting 4 weeks for their first unemployment check. So, having access to income and stuff, and people starting to not only hoard their money so that they can afford everything that's essential, and they would have to make decisions about what part of cannabis was essential to their daily lives and what part of going to the grocery store was essential. We saw all these kind of downward demand coming into the market. And now we've seen probably about a 35% decrease in revenue across the board from most of our retailers now. I think that's a pretty aggregated amount. So now we're trying to keep our businesses open with less revenue. We have an increased cost of doing business because we've now gone into sanitation and hazard pay and all the other things that are required to keep not only your employees safe, but the customer safe as well. So we've increased our cost of doing business. Then we adapted our business to curbside pickup and delivery pretty much in 24 hours. We were able to change the way we do business, change all the protocols, change our handling, everything. So, the cost of running the cannabis business just went up and our revenues went down. And so now we're kind of in this place where getting the moniker of being essential is really important to us because we wanted the right to be able to sell to all of our customers and patients and make sure they provided the things they're accustomed to. I don't think we realized how much of a responsibility it was more than just a right. And now that we have this responsibility to provide as an essential business, we have to know all the different ways that we can keep consumers safe. And so that's kind of the hardships we've had as an industry. And even though we've had to adapt really quickly throughout the years, 20 years of adapting, as soon as the government tells us to move in a different direction, our industry adapts really quickly. This is different. So we're trying to adapt to this new market that we have and also adapt our employment and stuff inside this pandemic. And I think it's been a heavy lift, to say the least.
How have the dispensaries adapted to the Center for Disease Control's guidelines?
Well, what UCBA has done is we've taken all the CDCs and the World Health Organization, all the cleaning protocols, sanitation that's there, trying to make sure that we take all of those things into account. And we've sent out a 45-page cleaning protocol for all of our members and all the retailers out there to kind of see what are the best practices to make sure that we're all kind of on the same page. As you adapt your business and you kind of try to transition into this new world, you can't leave anything out when it comes to protecting your employees and protecting your customers. So since that was pretty much the most important part, it was easy for all of our owners and stuff to come together. And also, we really paired up with a couple of labor unions. UCBA has always been a real champion for cannabis expansion. So we took our cleaning protocols, took them to the labor unions because UCBA, they represent grocery workers, pharmaceuticals, and farm workers, and all three of those have been deemed essential. So we're like, can we combine our resources to make sure that we all have the best cleaning protocols for our businesses? That was kind of how we started off with this, which was, let's make sure everyone has the same information. Let's make sure that they are really kind of narrowly focused to what our businesses look like, because we can talk about what a grocery store does, but we kind of need to be focused on what does a cannabis retailer do inside of being more in alignment with the CDC's requirements and guidelines.
Yeah. Well, are you sharing the resources? Is the UFCW helping you guys? Or are you working together?
It's tough because, like everyone kind of looks at cannabis and goes, you know what, we got bigger things to deal with. Like we've got hospital workers who need masks. We've got grocery workers who are making sure people have food to survive. And sometimes people look at us as like, you're essential, but how essential are you? And that's a tough place to be in, because my workers and the people who are coming to our shops know us to be essential, and we want to make sure we provide for them. So we're not getting any FEMA support. The federal government isn't passing along cleaning and sanitation supplies to our essential businesses because we're not looked at as essential in the federal government's eyes. We're actually looked at as a Schedule I narcotic and shouldn't be getting any services. Federal assistance programs are not applying to cannabis businesses. And I'm sure we could talk a lot about that, so maybe we should, but I think right now, being able to get assistance from each other has been the way that we've created this community. UCBA just was able to bottle up 2,000 gallons of surface sanitizer. And what we've done is we've bottled it all up, and we're now going to distribute it to all the retailers throughout the state and other people in the supply chain, so that surface sanitizer, which I think equals close to 16,000 bottles of Lysol, we're now giving out the equivalent of 16,000 bottles of Lysol so that we can protect our employees and our consumers with surface sanitation. So
that's excellent.
We've got some manufacturers who do ethyl alcohol manufacturing to get concentrates. And so they had 1,000 gallons of ethyl alcohol. And we're like, hey, we really need that for hand sanitizers because Purell is, not available.
Mm-hmm.
Going to our manufacturers inside our supply chain and say, how much can you donate to us and to our industry so that we can protect each other? And so we've kind of gone up and down the supply chain and seen who has the proper materials available so that we can keep each other safe. And we're sharing that with each other, including we're sharing it with, communities in need. Going out and giving some of this surface sanitizer and stuff to the homeless is also part of this program. Being able to offer hand sanitizer as we get it to other underserved communities. So as soon as we kind of take care of each other, we take care of the community of which we represent as well. So that's been a big part of how UCBA, and I think this industry has been built over the years. We helped each other out, and that still holds true today.
That's admirable. Let me ask you a question. Since we talked about no federal help, I noticed that the UCBA is asking for extensions of license renewal deadlines from the Bureau of Cannabis Control, Cal Cannabis, the California Department of Public Health, as well as a waiver for license fees for 2020. Do you think the state's going to give into this request, seeing it reasonable in light of the fact we get no federal help?
I think when you start to discuss what small businesses are getting in the way of federal assistance, and we talk about some of those programs, and really those programs are put into place to protect your employees and protect the customers of your essential employees serve. And if we're not going to get that federal assistance, we're going to need to have some assistance somewhere. So trying to create state systems that mirror the federal ones so that cannabis companies can get access to small business loans, so they can get access to our payroll tax deferral programs.
How about a bank?
All these kind of things are there to keep businesses solvent and to keep employees employed and to keep employees safe. And so when we went and asked the BCC to give us kind of either time or complete kind of grant license fees to be removed for this year, it was kind of saying we're not getting federal assistance. And so if this is the quick and easiest way to get funds back into the employers inside the cannabis industry, get liquidity back into their companies, so they can continue to provide, assistance to their employees, then this is a quick and easy way for us to take stuff out of one line item budget that's going to a permitting fee and move it to our employment. Right now, my retail business would have to come up with $90,000 for a permitting fee this year. Well, $90,000 can help a lot of employees in this time of need.
It sure
we're
can.
all balance this out. We can't just ask for everything and expect the state government to come up with all this money when it may or may not have it. So trying to find the balancing act of not crippling the Bureau of Cannabis Control by not giving them any funds, because they're run completely off of our permitting fees. So if we take all of our permitting fees out of the Bureau of Cannabis Control, Department of Health, and Farming and Agriculture, we take all of their money away. How are they going to operate as a government agency to oversee our cannabis industry if they don't have any funds? And so this is a balancing act right now. How do we get the funds we need for our employees to stay safe? How do we get enough money to make sure that we, as businesses, continue to operate and continue to employ people? And then after this pandemic is done, we have enough money and funds to be able to rehire. If we've had to furlough some employees because of the reduction in revenue, what are we going to do to boost this industry back up? Because no one at the federal level is looking at this as something that we need help. But we have employees just like everyone else is, and take the Schedule I narcotic out of the focus of the federal government, and we're just like any other business who is really just trying to provide for our employees and our customers.
Mm-hmm. And how many government agencies would you have to go to ask for different reductions? Every one of them, or will the governor make the decision?
It's tough to say. I mean, going to the governor right now, and he's trying to find facilities for beds for COVID-19. It's tough to go and ask for provisions. So I think what we're trying to do is we're trying to stay within our industry, because our industry is focusing on cannabis. But to ask the governor to go away from looking for new convention centers, for more hospital beds, seems a little insensitive. So what our goal is to go talk to all of the cannabis leaders in our regulatory and legislative places to say, you regulate our industry, we are your focus. Since other portions of the state government are focusing on emergency preparedness and things of that nature, what can you do for us? So I think those are our first asks, to see where their leverage is, where their leniency may be, and where we can compromise. Those are our first conversations. The governor's office is a part of this conversation too. We're in close communication about what's going on, what is really the ability to be able to offer this kind of money. What does the state have in the way of funds to be able to, boost up these programs, as well as kind of help emergency responders? So we're all talking about a finite amount of money trying to help, what seems to be an infinite amount of need. Mm-hmm. So we have to balance that at every level. And even though there's a lot of assistance from the federal side, what happens if the state of California says, we're going to give a small business loan to cannabis companies, and we'd like the federal government to kind of fund that? I don't know that they're going to get that. They're not going to get that kind of federal funding just because they mandated, a small business loan for cannabis businesses, or at least we're unsure. And I think being unsure is really where cannabis businesses are right now. We don't know what kind of assistance we're going to get. And so we're just asking for some of these incremental, relaxation on fees and taxes, so that we can make sure we have a stockpile of funds and revenue so that we can provide for our employees, and continue to, provide for our essential status, and be able to kind of open back up. If we reduce the size of our businesses, open back up in a way where we can continue to, employ all the people who were there previously. That's really our goal.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of employees, how have the employees been handling the extra stress?
You know what? I think what's been nice is we've been able to adapt our business to be a lot less customer facing. Now that we do curbside delivery and you have to do an online order, no one's allowed inside of our building anymore unless you're coming up just to pick up a bag. So it's real easy now to kind of provide for the same number of people with a lot less need to come into the place of business. So we now do almost all of our stuff is curbside delivery. So we pretty much have a drive-through. So you can pull up. You're right near our back door, right within, inside of our security guard. We have people come out to your car. You've already made an order. We have your bag already ready. You put your money in a basket. We hand you your product. You grab the bag. We make no contact with anybody. And so that's kind of where we've kind of added this kind of safety and security. We've also decreased the amount of face-to-face interaction all of our employees have. So if you went into our shop right now in what would usually be called my retail space or the bud room, looks like just an inventory warehouse because we turned it into a completely different kind of business now where we package and fulfill orders where it used to be customers standing there. Now we have tables all over the place with a lot of our backstock and product out in the open so that we can fulfill orders quicker. And so we're able to take on, almost twice as much business with less employees, with less contact, but we have a lot less customer service. So it's been difficult for a business that is so customer facing and so customer service orientated to kind of have to turn into an online retail shop that really only gets to communicate with people on the phone or through like online text messaging. It's kind of tough. It's tough for consumers because they have new needs. They used to come into the shop and they really just wanted to go out and have a good time. Maybe they grabbed a joint, maybe they grabbed something for their knee pain. Now they're coming with anxiety and they want to understand what they can take to change because their needs have changed. And they really have these questions. So it's been a little bit difficult to get all that same kind of personalized care when we have this kind of technology that is between us. Like, that's what we're even doing today. I mean, you and I are here, miles away from each other trying to communicate in a way that is very personal, but we don't get to see each other eye to eye. And that's the part that's been difficult for patients and for, kind of my caregivers who are there, who are bud tenders and are forward-facing retail people. They've now had to adapt to this kind of online presence and online help, which changes a lot of things, but I think we're still being able to offer a lot of the products. And what we've done now is we've gone into describing our products in a lot more detail on our online platform so that when you are just scrolling through our menu, you get to see a description that is a lot more detailed than it was previously.
Mm-hmm.
When you saw a pre-roll, it pretty much said 1 gram pre-roll indica, come get it. Now it talks about terpene profiles and why you might have this and the physiological effects that you'll get from smoking this very specific pre-roll or very specific flower product. So we've taken that customer service and we've had to move it into text that it goes into the description of every product. So we're adapting.
Yep.
That's what all of our businesses are doing right now.
Are all the UCBA members able to do the curbside delivery, or how are they adapting?
It's tough because, when you're looking for parking and you're looking for space to be able to do this, every geographic location is going to have some other limitations. So I don't know that everyone can do it, but everyone has moved to online orders. I don't know too many people who are doing in-store sales anymore, but there are a few who only let 5 people into their kind of retail space at a time. They keep everyone socially distanced, and they sanitize, pretty much like every couple of hours. They go through and sanitize the whole thing. They hold people on the outside of the building for a while, going, "Sorry, we're cleaning for a half an hour," and they let people back in. So we've all adapted, but I think for the majority of the cannabis retailers, most of them have moved into kind of a curbside delivery model.
Well, that's a good thing. I'm sure it reduces stress for your workers. So, is there anything we haven't covered that you see as something we need to talk about?
I think we need to talk about what are we really going to do once this is over. We have this problem now where every business is looking for how do we emerge from this and what are going to be the long-term consequences of having a pandemic of this size interrupt us economically, socially. What are we going to do to build that back up? And I think this cannabis, culture is ready to kind of take on kind of a new era of how do we communicate better? How do we do better delivery? We've learned a lot now and what the consumer may or may not want. We've also kind of, pushed some of the consumers to go onto these online platforms and try to make better educated decisions without someone holding your hand. And so it's empowered a lot of these cannabis consumers to go, I'm in charge of my own destiny. I'm going to have to do some online research to find out what on this menu is going to be best for me. And so when we come out of this, we are going to see a slightly different consumer, because they are probably going to be forced for the next couple of months to kind of operate in this online platform. And in doing that, I think we're going to see a lot more online orders and a lot more businesses that are doing this kind of like pickup. And so it will kind of change the dynamic. I still think that we're definitely an industry that really caters to the individual and caters to the person who's in front of you, and you cater to that personality. And I think that's what's so great about this plant is you cater to people personally. But I think there's going to be some consumer changes as people go, you know what, I learned a lot. I now know how to navigate these websites and these menus, and I know how to do my own research now. I think we're going to see a different consumer kind of being a little bit more comfortable with kind of making some of their own decisions and having less questions. I know that before we could take up to 45 minutes to educate a consumer about all the aspects of the products that we have in our store and then what's best for them. I think we're going to have like a consumer that's going to come in with a pretty good base amount of knowledge, and they're going to have less questions, and they're going to be more specific about what needs they have. And I think having a more educated consumer about the products that are available and how they operate internally to their body, I think it's going to be a boon to the industry, because I think we'll elevate the conversation now at the dispensary level. Mm-hmm. They'll have a base knowledge that is way beyond just your indica sativa hybrid. They're going to go, I came in here for a pinene, rich, terpene flower that is in this price point, and I really like pining because it helps me in this kind of part of my day. I really think that consumer is going to be kind of come in with kind of a different ask. And I think that'll be good for our industry to kind of continue to push and elevate the kind of education people are going to demand.
Yeah, they'll be more informed. I think it's a good thing. Last question. How is supply?
I just got off the phone with probably 11 of the largest distributors in the state. We discussed like cleaning protocols, because we're going to start doing videos. It's going to seed to sale sanitation. So at every level that a product moves from one hand or one license to the other, we want to know what that interaction is and how that product was secured before it changed hands to another license type. So in having all those conversations about what do we do for sanitation at every level before it gets to the consumer, we did talk about what the supply chain looks like. And I think we've got a very robust supply chain still, and we've got a lot of distributors in the market. I think everyone's trying to be as nimble as possible. If some of their critical employees become sick or need to take care of their families, how do we help each other? So I know that there's a lot of businesses now, even industries that are looking to cannabis because we still are essential. Mm-hmm. They're looking for work. And so we have seen this kind of influx of other industries coming to cannabis, trying to be helpful in our labor needs, who come with a pre-existing skill set that has been very helpful inside of our supply chain. So it was pretty strong as a supply chain. Mm-hmm. Well, that's great. Supply was ready. So I think we're really good right now.
Okay. I'm glad to hear that for sure. Joe, the sound guy, has a question he'd like to ask you.
Hey, Jerred. Joe, the sound guy. How's it going? The question, I actually have two questions. One of them is, what do you think about the fact that actually cannabis users share spliffs? And, you're talking about coming out of this thing we're going through now. What's going to be different? Do you think that's going to change? And the second question is, have you heard the rumor about people that don't have toilet paper, they're using rolling papers? I don't know if that's true. Can you...
Man, we'll be more aware of when these kinds of things are out there. But, we come in such close contact with each other. This community is about hugging and puff passing. And, and I would hate to see that culture disappear because of one scare. I think we'll be more aware of it now. But puff passing hasn't hurt anyone. So it's sad that we put ourselves in this place now to be more aware of it. But I don't think the culture is going to change much.
Well, I'd like to thank you for talking to Cali High today, Jerred, and good luck with everything. And we'll be paying attention to what goes down.
No problem. Thank you for listening to me drone on about the regulations and stuff a bit. But I appreciate you guys taking the time.
No, our listeners do need to be informed. Thank you very much, and have a great day.
Appreciate it much.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Essential. Essential. What is essential?
Air is essential.
Essential.
Water is essential.
Essential.
Shelter is essential.
Essential.
Food is essential.
Most essential.
Weed is essential.
That's nice.
Buds are essential.
Essential.
Sex is essential. Social interaction essential.
6 feet away.
I want to thank you folks for listening to episode 8 of Cali High. Stay safe. These are trying times. Joe?
Stay inside. Wear a mask.
Stay inside. Wear a mask. Put on your gloves if you have to touch anything coming from outside.
Oh shit.
Think you left anything out?